Welcome everyone in the internet. We're here at Gamble Mansion and the Pavilion, and tonight we're going to be studying something we did 4 years ago. I actually printed out my exact sermon from 4 years ago, and we're going to go over it again and look at what's changed. And the title I titled this sermon 4 years ago is America's Doomed. And it was right after Trump got elected. Now, I wasn't pessimistic about Trump, although I really wanted to see what he was going to do. I didn't trust him. So far, he's kind of kept his promises as well as he could, I think. He's been as boisterous and braggadocious as I expected, so whatever. I mean, it's a little over the top sometimes, but basically, I'm glad for somebody that's willing to fight. But the reason why I did this 4 years ago is a warning to us not to be confident in politicians. Politicians are routinely going to make mistakes. And I know you'll say, well, Trump's not a politician, he's a businessman. But yeah, well, he won a high political office, the presidency. He's now a politician, I guess. Maybe not as in depth as the rest, but like everyone's making mistakes. Everyone's got problems. And I wanted to go over some of the things we talked about 4 years ago. And I'm not going to go over everything we did, but I want to look at how things have changed. You know, we talked about 4 years ago, vocabulary changes in America, right? When some of us were very young, the word sodomite was used. What did that mean? Well, it got changed to homosexual and then to gay. Now, you know, the Flintstones are apparently homosexuals because they have a gay old time. They ripped off a word that doesn't mean homosexual, and they changed the word. Well, why do we accept that? Well, because it sounds more pleasant. But the act is still an abomination before God, no matter what. Also, subversive years ago meant somebody who was ready to destroy the government. And today we just call them liberals because they're subverting the government. They really are. And then missing words. You never hear anyone say, so-and-so's a God-fearing person anymore. But you used to hear that. It used to be a badge of honor. Now you never hear it. But we do have new words. New words. Under the Obama administration, we heard about quantitative easing. What did that mean? That meant they were printing more money. And now under Trump, we really didn't have that much until COVID-19 broke out. And then we had, what is it when they're sending us all the money? What do they call it? Stimulus, right? We've had those before, but with this COVID-19, you know, the stimulus. Well, what was it? Is it necessary? Did we have to have the stimulus? I don't know. I think so. I think we probably did. I relate the stimulus like, let's say, you know, 20 years from now, Cameron is now married. He's got a beautiful wife and you know 7 kids and okay, he's looking scared at 7, but okay, let's back it down to 4. He's got 4 or 5 kids, you know, and great family, and all of a sudden one of his kids gets a life-threatening illness. And like many families, perhaps he's begun to get a little heavily in debt where he really didn't intend to. Just the way life is sometimes. Sometimes you just spend money you didn't intend to. So, and him and his wife had been trying to get out of debt, but all of a sudden the kid gets sick. Well, it might be time to pull out the credit cards again. You don't just say, I'm not going to, you know, have my kid treated with this life-threatening illness, COVID-23 by then. But they would have their child. They would go further into debt to fix the problem, and then worry about the debt later. It's kind of like there's a guy named Jeff Cooper, and if you ever get a chance to listen to his speeches and his talks, Most of them were recorded in the 1970s. He's been dead now for probably 20 years. He was a colonel in the Marine Corps, and then he went into firearms training. Very wise man. And he used to say, when he's training people how to defend themselves with a firearm, people would say, well, if I do this, I might get sued later. And he would say, listen, you got two problems when you're having to pull your firearm in self-defense. One is, I got to survive. The other is, I might get sued later. And he said, solve the first problem first, and then worry about the second one when it comes around. And that's kind of the way, when you have to go borrow some money to get something desperately needed done, you solve the first problem first, which is to get the desperately needed thing done, and then worry about paying off the debt later. Unfortunately, our government doesn't operate that way. You know what I mean? The new word that we haven't had in our vocabulary very often is the word trillions. I remember, I think when Reagan ran for office, he complained about the national debt being so many $1 billion. And now it's so many $1 trillion. And most people have no concept of what a trillion is. Those of you who were here 4 years ago may remember a little bit of how much a trillion is, but a lot of you probably have no idea. So if I said to Yasmin, and I said, Yasmin, will you loan me $20? And I'll pay you off in 1,000,000 seconds. She might go, I wonder how long that'll be. And she might get her calculator, and she would figure out that would be about 11 and a half days. And she'd go, oh, okay, 1,000,000 seconds, no big deal. Paul will pay me the $20 back in about 11 and a half days. Good, that's fine. I'll loan him the money, right? And then I said, wait. I misspoke. I meant to say 1 billion seconds. Then she would get out her calculator and she might go, wait a minute. How long is 1 billion seconds? What? 1 billion seconds is 31.6 years. That's a big difference, isn't it? It's a big difference from 1,000,000 to 1 billion. Most people think, when you think million to billion, you think, oh, that's just a little bit more. No, it's 1,000 times more. A billion is 1,000 million. So it's a big difference. And when we talk about our national debt, and it went from billion to trillion, and if I said, now, Yasmin, I'll pay you back in 1 trillion seconds, that $20, she would get out her calculator and go, wait a minute, none of us are going to be alive for that, Paul. It'll be your great, and like 20 greats down the road, grandkids paying me back, my great grandkids paying back. I'm not loaning you the money and paying back in 1 trillion seconds, because 1 trillion seconds would be about 31,000 years. That's a big difference, isn't it? Million, billion, trillion. Big difference. And we throw these words around because they sound similar, and we think our national debt's, X number of $1 trillion. That's no big deal. It's not much more than that much $1 billion, but it's 1,000 times as much. So that's a big deal. Proverbs 22 says, the rich rule over the poor, the borrower is servant to the lender, and he that soweth iniquity shall reap vanity, and the rod of his anger shall fail. Well, how much is our national debt? I already said it's in the trillions. How many trillion? Well, how many trillion was it 4 years ago, do you think? It was about 20 trillion when I initially did this. Now the national debt is 27 trillion. That's a big jump. Much of that is this year. Much of that extra is this year, because we're spending out all kinds of money to pay for the stimulus packages and not getting much in taxes back, because a lot of people have lost their jobs and a lot less money is being brought into the coffers. Now, that's the official national debt. The actual national debt is more like $82 trillion. $82 trillion.
What's the difference?
Huh? Why is it different? Well, the official debt is how much we owe in people that have bought government bonds, or governments that have bought bonds. China owns a lot of our bonds, but a lot of individuals. If you have a $100 or $1,000 savings bond at home, you have a government debt. You own some government debt. I don't know if that's a proud thing or what, but the government will pay you back when that thing is due, and they'll pay you more than you paid for it. Well, that's the official U.S. debt. The actual debt is based on things we've promised to pay in the future. What if we promised to pay in the future? Cameron? One big one is Social Security. We've told everyone you've paid into it, and we're going to pay you back. We're going to pay you an X amount of dollars as you go on. So that's a big thing. Government pensions too. People who work for the military, work for the U.S. federal government, their pensions are not included in the federal debt, the official debt, but they are an actual debt. We do owe that. Disability through the military. There's a lot of things that we have committed to pay that we should pay. So the actual U.S. debt is way, way higher. Now, 4 years ago, it was only 66 trillion. It's gone up, 16 trillion in 4 years. Oh, by the way, how much is that per citizen? Well, this is just the official debt per person living in America, right? 4 years ago, it was $61,000 per person. Today, it's $81,000. But if you add in all those other things, it's $216,000 per person. Excuse me, not if you add any other thing. I'm talking about if you only count the taxpayers. The first amount is just all the people, divide the debt up. Everyone owes 60 or 81,000. But a lot of people don't pay taxes. Does Ollie pay taxes? No, she's a freeloader. That no good, rotten 1-year-old. How dare her, right? Grayson doesn't pay taxes. Let's see, most of the rest of us here do. Mom and Dad probably don't because of the Social Security situation, right? Now you're at that age. All right. Now, one thing I talked about 4 years ago, and I've talked about it a lot since then, is this idea of a normalcy bias. What is normalcy bias, Katie?
It's something we feel like we're dealing with a lot, but quite.
All right, somebody else. Yes.
It's like, well, this is the way we've always done it, so this is the only way that we can possibly do it. It's like at work, they always tell us, like, don't get in the routine of we've always done it this way. It doesn't necessarily mean it's the only way
Right.
to do it.
I've got a great video I use in one of my classes I teach for armed security. And it's this armed guard at a bank, and he's leaning against the counter talking to a teller, and they're just having a conversation. And he's supposed to be paying attention. He's a guard, right? He's not paying attention because in his mind, it's just another day. It's just like yesterday. No one tried to rob the place yesterday, and they're not going to rob it today. Well, as he's talking, an armed robber walks right across the plate glass windows right in front of him. The guy doesn't even see him, and he doesn't even spot the guy until he's inside the bank with a gun in his hand. Normalcy bias. That armed guard said, oh, it's not going to happen to me because it never happens. Well, it might. So don't fall for that. In Nazi Germany in the 1930s, there were about 550,000 Jews when Adolf Hitler took power. Adolf Hitler ran on a platform of I hate Jews. It wasn't some secret he had. If you read his book Mein Kampf, you would have known he hates Jews and he wants to get rid of them all. After he came to power, out of 550,000 Jews, 100,000 left Germany and survived. Most of the 450,000 left died because they kept saying, oh, it won't happen here. I'm not worried about it. Normalcy bias. They think it isn't going to happen to them. So, Luke 21, verses 20 and 22, or 20 and 21 says, when you see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know that the desolation thereof is nigh. Let them that are in Judea flee to the mountains, and let them that are in the midst of it depart out, and let not them that are in the countries there enter thereinto. Now, Jesus was actually speaking, I believe, prophetically, not of just a few years down the road, but of the tribulation period. This is going to happen in the tribulation period. But it happened just a few years after he said it, a couple decades later, or 3 decades later. After he said it, Jerusalem was surrounded by armies, and the Jewish historian Josephus records that no Christians died in the destruction of Jerusalem. Almost everyone in Jerusalem died. Why didn't any Christians die? Because they left, because Jesus said to leave. What if they had had a normalcy bias like most Americans have, and they would have said, oh, it's not going to happen here? This isn't what Jesus is talking about. They would have died. They didn't. They listened to Jesus and they lived. All right. Based on, as we talked about a few years ago, I'm going to go over fear too. Now, does all this mean we should live in fear? No, we shouldn't. I got a statistic, an analysis of something the other day, and it's attitudes and behaviors of COVID-19 by party and gender. Party means political party here. So everyone, I want everyone to answer. I'm going to call on each of you about this. What percent of Democratic men do you think are worried about getting coronavirus?
I was about to say
85? Okay. 70.
I've seen these percentages.
So Tim is cheating.
I don't know.
It's between 85 and 70. It's 77% of Democratic men are worried about getting coronavirus. What about Republican men?
56. 2.
2, 6, 50,
200. Negative 200.
20%. What about Democratic women?
100%.
They're the ones you're seeing driving around with their mask on, probably, right? 80% of Democratic women are worried about it. What about Republican women?
30.
It's 29%, yeah. Very close. What about concerned about exposure at their workplace? Percentage of Democratic men? Yasmin, what do you think? You haven't answered any yet, so 75? It's 57. You had the right numbers, but in the wrong order. She knew it, right? What about Mom? What about Democratic women? 62. Republican men. This is weird because, well, Republican men. How many? What do you think? 50%. It went down with the Democrats. You're saying it goes up with the Republicans?
Well, I don't know. It made no sense that it went down with the Democrats.
It's 23. It did go up with the Republicans. It went down with the Democrats, up with. Why do you think that is? I'll tell you part of it.
Because the Republicans are working.
Bingo. Serious. I'm serious. Think of your massive groups of Democrats. Teachers' unions, government employees, people that by and large their job, they were able to take a great deal of time off and still be paid. That's why they don't care about lockdowns. They're like, lock us down forever. We don't care.
Yeah.
We're going to get paid at the expense of the taxpayers, unfortunately.
Democrats see the actual wrong. It should be Democrats.
Okay. All right. With women, Democratic women is 62% and 39% for Republican women. So Republicans go up, Democrats go down. That's really interesting. What about people that report that they always social distance? Democratic women. Always is a big word there. It's 54% for Democratic, that was men, 54%. 57% for Democratic women. Among Republicans, the men are 19% and the women are 29%. Wow, interesting. What about avoid public places?
Oh, we know the Democrats.
70% of the men and 73% of the Democratic women. And then it's 31 and 38% for Republicans. Obviously, the other 30% of Democratic men are the ones lighting fires in Antifa, right?
Well, that's their family, their extended family.
What about avoid small gatherings, friends, family, and narrow way church, right?
Yeah,
Democrats would be like
a large percentage.
80%.
63, 64 for Democrats. You see the thing, who has the fear? Democrats, right? Why do they fear? Well, part of it is where they're getting their news. MSNBC, CNN, all those groups. I mean, they're every day. Oh, X number of people died today. Yeah, but add it up, how many would have died anyway? The actual, if I remember the statistic, and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, I believe the actual amount of deaths in American 2020 is down from previous years. Why is that? Because we're all sitting inside and not driving. Even though there's people dying of COVID, they're dying of other things less. Now, I think the death rate may go up in 2021 because of the misdiagnosis of cancer and other life-threatening illnesses, because we weren't able to go to our doctors. I had a doctor's appointment canceled, and I have socialized medicine basically with the VA. They just shut it down, and I thought, what, are we supposed to just stop getting sick? I mean, in the midst of a disease breaking out, you eliminate doctors? That's kind of weird, I think. But anyway, all right, back to this.
This is the best one, I think.
What's that?
I think this is, I've been waiting for this one, the most dramatic one.
Oh, what? Was it?
The percentage, the last one, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay, how about
Go
the
back to work.
ready to go back to work?
Yes.
Right now.
Yeah.
10%.
Yeah, I know. It's
Democrats, men.
10%.
We got 0 and we got 10.
3%, I think.
The answer is right between that for the men, 5%.
5% of men are ready to go back.
3% of Democratic women.
Yeah.
Republican men, 64%.
Yeah.
Democratic men or women, Republican women, 54%. I am definitely one of those 64%. I am done with this nonsense. A disease that kills the tiny fraction of the people it does, I'm not concerned about it.
Elizabeth become a Democratic woman for that one.
Why? What?
Because she doesn't want to go to work.
All right. Back to our lesson. Now that part wasn't from 4 years ago, obviously. Back to our lesson though. One little tidbit. Why is America still here? The debt we have is unprecedented in human history. This year, the amount of debt to gross national product is about 79%, which means our national debt is about 79% of what we produce in a given year as an entire nation. That's incredibly high. That's incredibly ridiculous. So why haven't we collapsed yet? because God is the one that says when we collapse. That's right. Acts 17:26 says, and he hath made of one blood all nations of men. Hear that? One blood. We're all related, folks. I don't care what color your skin is.
We're all made in God's image.
I don't care. One blood. We have had. I'm having trouble thinking of a culture or skin color we have not had in our church that's been welcome. I mean, we welcome everyone, but we've had every color I can think of. I'm thinking maybe we haven't had any people from India or something like that. Perhaps I can't recall that. Well, we've had Asians, plenty of Asians. We've had, black, brown. We have white
White is
everywhere. Huh?
White is white.
Well, we have a couple really pasty white folks here, near albino folks, All right, we got a bunch. One blood, all nations of men, for to dwell on the face of the earth. And listen to this. This is the key part. And hath determined the times before appointed, and the bounds of their habitations. God knew before he ever created the earth how long America's going to last. I think 12 years ago when Barack Obama got elected, his intent was to destroy America. Every policy he had seemed bent on that. And it didn't work. I truly believe that. Why? Because he can't destroy America till God says America's time is up. That's one reason. Second reason, Christians in America. There's still a few true Christians left. And I say a few. I'm not going to say everyone in America who claims to be a Christian is a Christian, because there are many frauds. I would say the vast majority of Christians or people that claim to be a Christian in America are not. But there are still plenty of true Christians. And we are the salt and the light of America. Our salt preserves anything it touches. I have recipes at home to preserve. I collect these old recipes. Sometimes I watch old recipes on YouTube. There's a channel I like to watch, and he'll do these weird old recipes, and some of them are just stuff preserved in salt. Elizabeth and I made sauerkraut earlier this year, still in the fridge. What is it? It's just salt and cabbage. That's all it is, man. Bunch of cabbage with some salt in it. Boom. It preserves the cabbage. You couldn't leave the cabbage sitting around the way we left the sauerkraut sitting around. It's preserved it. That's one thing. And you could go back to Genesis. And I'm not going to read the verses. You should read them, though. Go back and look at them. Genesis 18 is Abraham. God has come to Abraham, and he's told him he's going to check out Sodom and Gomorrah. He's going to walk to Sodom and Gomorrah and check it out. And Abraham knows what God means. He thinks God's going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And obviously he was right. He did. And so he begins to plead for Sodom and Gomorrah. And he pleads with him, and he starts, I believe the number he starts with is 50. Yeah, it's 50. He says, Lord, will you destroy that great city if there's 50 righteous people? Now, a lot of, we don't know exactly how many Sodom and Gomorrah had in it, but a lot of theologians think it was perhaps well over 1 million people. So 50 out of 1 million isn't much. But God said, I won't destroy it if there's 50. And Abraham kept working down until he got to 10. And then Abraham stopped. If Abraham had kept going and got down to 4, Sodom and Gomorrah still may be around today. You never know. Because God found 4 to be saved in Sodom and Gomorrah. Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters. And out of those 4, only 3 of them survived. Because his wife looked back. That was her home. I don't want to leave I can picture it. I know some ladies like that. I'm not leaving my home. I don't care. Get out, you just need to, there's a time and a place. All right. That's another reason, is because we have enough Christians that God's protecting us. But I don't believe it's going to go on forever. There's a time and a place. I said 4 years ago that I thought the Trump presidency was of a respite for America so we could prepare for what is inevitable, that America will collapse. I don't know when, and I don't know how. If Trump is reelected, we may have 4 more years. I don't know. But if Biden gets elected and he enacts the policies he says he's going to enact, the Green New Deal will more than double our national debt like that. We can't do that. It's like saying, oh, well, our family's badly in debt, so I know a solution, let's borrow more money. That's exactly what they would be doing, among other things. Among other things. The thing to remember, and we say this every week, it seems like I bring this verse up, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. Who do we wrestle against? Principalities, powers, rulers of the darkness of this world, and spiritual wickedness in high places. We wrestle against demonic presences in this earth. That's the real enemy. It's not the Pelosi's, it's not the Bidens, it's not all those people. Those people are following their leaders who are the spiritual wickedness in high places. But those people aren't the true leaders. They're following the bidding of who they worship, really. But one verse I need to say more often is found in Colossians. It's Colossians 2:15. And it's talking about Jesus, and it says, having spoiled the principalities and powers, he made a show of them openly, triumphing over them in it. In other words, when Jesus died on the cross, he already conquered the principalities and powers mentioned in Ephesians. It's already conquered. The conquering is done. Jesus is the victor. Right now, it's like they're in their death flails. And mankind has chosen to go along with the defeated foe by and large. But the fact is, we have already won the fight. The fight's over. We've won it, but we need to deal with the people that are left who are still trying to fight, still think they have a chance of victory, and there is none. How long is America going to last? I don't know. I have no idea. I know about this time 4 years ago, I thought Hillary Clinton surely is going to be the next president based on polling and all that kind of stuff. But much like this year, the polling still shows Trump's not going to get elected. And
Visually, we can tell.
But Biden had a rally last week that 0 people showed up to.
Oh my goodness.
It was Biden and Harris together. 0 people showed up. The only people there were their staff and reporters. And Trump had a rally in Sanford where I think they got 4 hours notice that he was going to be there, and thought.
Because people were there overnight.
Okay, it was more than 4 hours. Okay, I was wrong on the 4 hours thing, but it wasn't much notice, and people showed up by the thousands. So I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know. I do know I don't trust what I'm hearing from certain people, but just pray for America. Pray we can get ourselves survived. All right? I'm going to cut it off here for the internet. We're going to go on. For those of you actually here and present, we're going to talk about some things we can do to help prepare us for the future. But for those of you on the internet, we'll see you later.